Hi everyone, Michael with Bad Goblin Games, and I want to take a few minutes to address how we handle command and control in Ages of Conflict. So command and control really seems to mean different things to different people. So I just want to kind of explain what it means to us. So for us, there's a few questions, right? So basically, it's how much control should a player have over his or her army? Should there be a guarantee that all of your units will activate every turn? Should those units behave exactly as you intend them to? So really, it's how much of a limitation should you have over your army on the table. Now, there may be degrees of opinion as to what constitutes command and control, though I believe those questions really sum up the situation best. Now, for us, the answer to those questions is more or less a no. However, we also have to keep in mind that Ages of Conflict is a game. And so, as we did with our movement rules, our goal was to find the right balance between simulating reality, having fun, and moving the game forward. So, having units sit around for multiple turns not doing anything due to unlucky activation rolls or drawing the wrong activation card, not rolling for enough activation points or pips or what have you. While they may be a bit more realistic, because now you're tying those things to, say, orders getting distributed to various units and what have you. You can say, well, maybe the order didn't get there, or was late getting there, or whatever the cause. So while that may be maybe a bit more realistic, it also kind of slows the game down. This is not unique to miniature war games. We see the same thing in board games, card games, role-playing games. Anytime you're basically forced to sit out for multiple turns, it's not a fun mechanic. And these are games, so our goal first and foremost is to have fun. Now, with all that in mind, I do want to talk about a few of the decision and design points for Ages of Conflict and how they relate to command and control. Now, first off, we're making the assumption that the battle plan was communicated before the battle. We're saying that all the leaders met before the battle, they hashed out an overall plan, and everyone knows their part. We're also assuming that there are leaders to some degree in every unit. So, for example, every company has the equivalent of, say, a captain or a centurion. Every battalion has the equivalent of something, like a lieutenant or what have you. You can call them whatever you want, whatever ranks, whatever titles. We're making the assumption that there's a leader in that unit or close by that unit that's keeping the unit going. Whether that means telling them to, go take that hill, take that, that objective over there, whatever the case, there is a leader there or nearby that's basically handling that. Now, finally, we're also making the assumption that orders from higher up are being transmitted throughout the battle by way of runners or messengers, something along those lines. Now that I've said all that, you don't really have to play that way, okay? There's room for modification within the rules. So, for example, you are free to introduce a simple command check when activating a unit if you want to kind of keep that element of command and control. Perhaps you want to simulate an order that arrives late or an order not arriving at all. So when I activate this unit, say they activate, they have march orders. Well, let me roll to see if that activation actually went off. I needed a 6. I got 1 5 and 1 6. That's a success. So the unit activates. I can go ahead and do what I intended to do. If I fail, then maybe they do nothing. Maybe there's some default action you want your units to take if they fail. So you do have some options within the rules, so you can play around with these things. You can also have, I know some players like to have like a command radius. So if there's not, say, a general or some sub-commander within a certain radius of a unit, if that commander's not there, you can have them default to a certain order. Or again, you can fall back to the activation roll. So there is room within the Ages of Conflict rules to introduce those elements if you'd like. Now let's move on to some of the command and control aspects we do have in the game. So I was just kind of mentioning orders here. Ages of Conflict is an orders-based system. We have an entirely separate video on our orders, so I'm not going to really go into detail with them here. So just understand that every unit gets issued an order. Now, while this may not be command and control in the traditional sense, it does mean that you must plan each turn. You have to act with a bit of foresight, and you don't have the option of deciding what action a unit will perform as it's activated. So at the beginning of the turn, every unit receives an order, and what you're really thinking is you're trying to think, okay, what's going to happen this turn? What's going to happen with my other units? What is my enemy going to do? So you have to think about this stuff in advance. I don't have the option of activating this unit and then deciding what it's going to do. I have to make all those decisions at the beginning of the turn. Now, next up, if you've watched, say, the combat or movement or unit videos, you've heard me talk about an attribute called presence. Now, presence is a measure of a unit's stamina and aura, and it's kind of like a measure of intimidation. So let's say we have, and I'm just going to move these some of these out of the way to kind of keep them simple. Let's just say we have this infantry company here. This infantry company has a presence of 1, so it's not very intimidating. However, we also have this dragon here. This dragon it's a big scary thing. It has a presence of 5, which is that's as high as we go in the game. So that's a pretty significant difference. So a couple things here. If this unit of infantry wants to charge this dragon, because who knows why I wouldn't do it. But let's say they did, because their presence is lower, they must make a command check. So I roll the dice. If one of these is not a 6, then this unit, if one of these is not a 6, that's a failed command check, which means this unit refuses to budge. They're not going to go into combat with that dragon. They're going to look at their captain or centurion or whatever and say, "Are you crazy?" Now, conversely, let's say the dragon charges in to the infantry here. Since the dragon has a 5 presence and this infantry has a 1, the infantry is again obligated to make a command check. So they roll. Again, I fail. I rolled a 2 and a 4, and I needed a 6 on one of those dice. That means since they were charged by a unit with a higher presence and they fail, this unit flees the field. They are gone. Next up, we have break tokens. I go into more detail in the combat video in regard to break tokens. What they are really is a measure of stress, fatigue, loss of morale, injuries, how those factors are impacting a unit as the battle progresses, as it's in combat. So I'm just going to kind of simulate a couple of things here. This unit, if it has 3 companies in it, this unit has what we call a break point of 3. So it can sustain 3 break points without it really causing a problem. However, once it goes over its breakpoint value, so let's say since right now its breakpoint value is a 3, if it sustains 4 breakpoints, one of 2 things are going to happen to this unit. It's either going to fall back, so this is kind of like a controlled retreat. It falls back, or it routes from the table. You just pick up the entire unit and it's gone. And that's done through, again, through a command check. So we roll our dice. If I pass, then it falls back. If I fail, it routes. Again, it's not a decision you make. This is going to happen regardless of however you want this unit to behave. Once it hits that breakpoint value, the decision is out of your hands at that point. Now, finally, we have, chain routing. Now, earlier versions of Ages of Conflict included really what amounted to a chain routing mechanic. So let's just say these were 3 separate units, and let's say this one, routed from the table for whatever reason. Since these 2 were pretty close by and they could see that unit that routed, there was a chance they would also route from the table. So while this was probably pretty close to reality, because we do know that there are battles that are lost when, say an army's entire right flank collapsed, right, just due to one unit running, and then all these other units nearby, they have limited vision, they don't really know what's going on. All they see is their comrades 50 yards away are now turning and running through, like, well, we probably need to get out of here too. So that's basically what chain routing is. So we had that rule in, though it didn't really make for a very fun game. So we did modify it a bit. So again, if we kind of go back to our example here, let's just say that, again, for whatever reason, this unit routes. Let's say this dragon goes, charges in and eats them. And the ones that survive say, we're getting out of here. They run. Now these other units, since they were nearby and they saw this happen, they still have to make that command check, right? But if they fail, instead of being immediately removed from the table, they're going to get break tokens. Now, depending upon the size of the unit, that may not cause too much of a factor, but if it's a unit that has already accumulated some break points, or they're small units, then they themselves might be looking at a situation again where they're falling back or routing. So those are basically our thoughts on command and control and how we've implemented those thoughts in Ages of Conflict. I hope you enjoyed the video. We do have several other how-tos available here that you can check out to learn more about the basics of Ages of Conflict. You can also join us on Facebook if you have any suggestions or questions. Thank you.